Welcome to the PIO Podcast, a place for all things public information related for police, fire, EMS, and local government. An open forum to learn, grow, and develop your public information skills. Your host, Robert Tornabene, is a public information officer with over 10 years in the field and 27 years of law enforcement background. In each episode, we will explore different aspects of the public information officer profession. Weekly, we will delve into the field of public information by talking to other PIOs. So sit back and enjoy this episode.
Good afternoon. Today on the PIO podcast, we have Elisa Bubak. She is the Public Information Officer for the Joaquin County District Attorney's Office. Elisa, welcome to the show.
Hi, Robert. Thank you so much for having me.
I am so happy you were able to come on. You have an interesting perspective, and that was one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on. You came from the private sector, private to public, which is usually the opposite way around, which is okay. But I wanted to get your perspective on that but I want to first hear about your background before we jump into all the other stuff that we're going to talk about. So what's your background?
Well, Robert, I am the PIO for San Joaquin County District Attorney's Office. I started my journey into communications and that kind of sector right after college. I have a degree in political science and pre-law and English from University of the Pacific here in Stockton. And when I graduated, I started working for a local casino as their social media marketer and content manager, which was a lot of fun. I cut my teeth there. I really enjoyed the work. And then when my husband and I purchased a home in Lodi, we wanted to move a little bit closer to home. I got a job working for the Lodi District Chamber of Commerce as their director of communications. And that was so I went from like private sector to not-for-profit and now to public. And it's been a ride. I'm going to tell you, it's been a lot of culture change, a lot of shift in the career over the last 9 years.
I would think so, especially working for a casino, because that's got to be kind of fun because, you know, they're just trying to get people in the doors to gamble. And
Yes. So much fun. Actually, I'm sure some of the people who are listening, maybe from Northern California, they would recognize some of those commercials pretty quickly. Our spokesperson was the CEO. He was in every one of those kitschy commercials. But yes, anything we needed or wanted in the marketing department, we got. There's no, paperwork really to be filled out. There was not a lot of backlog. And then making that change, like I said, to a not-for-profit, which meant we were member-driven, right? Chambers of Commerce, they do stuff for local businesses. So our funds were based on the memberships that we had. And so that was a little bit different. And then now, well, government.
Yeah, and you realize how slow things actually occur, and then how hard it is to get things done, or to get funds to do things is even harder sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, so you made the leap from private to public. What's the big culture change? Because we kind of had that discussion when we were going back and forth in email. What's the culture change? And I think people would be interested in your thoughts on that move and how you went through it.
I mean, I think you hit it on the head, where typically you see people start in the public and then they go private because there typically is a little bit more freedom and a little bit more wiggle room. I tell people that I chose to do this job, one, because I have a soft spot for San Joaquin County District Attorney's Office. I interned here when I was in college. So when this opportunity came available, I was stoked to apply. But two, I really wanted to give back into my community where I saw a need. And I think that this is what your podcast episodes address from other PIOs, right? Where this is a whole sector of government, whether it's law enforcement, fire, EMS, those kinds of local government agencies, needing someone to communicate to the public. And so I saw the need that was there for this administration and this office. But the thing that I think that shocked me the most is being so beholden to the community and to our constituents and to the people who live around us. And I say that positively. I don't want to make it sound like it's a negative. It's something like we're accountable and we have to be transparent because we're funded by the people. Like, the people are why we're here. Those are who we serve. And I think that was a little bit of a shock for me when I first came, just for the sheer amount of feedback we would be getting from the public.
I agree. And it's interesting because I think some organizations sometimes forget that they're public based. And, you know, I used to get a giggle when I was an officer on the street and somebody said, "I pay your salary." And I would laugh because maybe they didn't live in our community, and I'd say, okay, your quarter that you donated to the city helped pay for my salary or somewhere along the line. But
Right.
it is true. We are beholden to the community because they do pay the salaries of the employees that are there, and we have a
Mhm.
responsibility to provide them the information or whatever they're asking for in some format in a timely way.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why part of the reason why, my husband's also in law enforcement. He works for a local department within our jurisdiction. And so it's not unfamiliar in our household of those kinds of stories of the public interactions. And so when I saw the need that was here for specifically for a district attorney's office, I mean, I jumped at the chance just because I feel like there's so much good that comes out of public entities in government, but we don't hear it. We don't hear all of the good, you
Did,
know?
did they not have a public information officer before?
Not a specific public information officer. No, they had one of the attorneys who was kind of like still doing cases and trying cases, and then also would work on social media. And then they had a few consultants. But I am the first like budgeted for public information officer.
Oh, so you're truly breaking ground for them then, because
Yes.
that's a big change for an organization, because when they have the figurehead attorney or whatever, they're still thinking in legal terms. They're not necessarily thinking of the political terms and
Mhm.
so on that go in there, and the impact that certain words have. Lawyers speak and lawyers speak. That's so that
Yeah.
language that they speak.
I mean, and cop speak, right? Like
Yes,
it's a
yes,
lingo all its own.
yeah, and we have to, as a PIO, we have to kind of balance that language back and forth for the public's benefit, which can be tough sometimes.
It can be. No, something that I've learned here is that and my husband actually says it too. So it's not just lawyers, but it's not a court of justice; it's a court of law. And I think that that's a misconception that the public has of like, eye for an eye. Why did this guy only get this much time? Like he did this crime, and it's like, well, technically by law, this is how it plays out. And so it's kind of our job as PIOs to digest that information and then give it to the public in a way they can understand.
All right, so let's jump on that. So the difference, you kind of touched on this next question, the difference in perspective versus what a traditional law enforcement agency would talk about. Law enforcement officers, they arrest people, you guys prosecute them,
Yeah.
and then the outcome may not be what the public wants. How do you manage the differences in the case conflict?
I mean, it is difficult. It's difficult to handle because there's a lot that goes into prosecuting a case that I don't think people are aware of. There's a process. Our office is dedicated to ensuring public safety, advocating for our victims, and then making sure that justice is equitable and fair for everybody. Because just because you were arrested doesn't mean you necessarily are guilty of a crime, or maybe right, just because there's probable cause that you've done something doesn't mean beyond a reasonable doubt to 12 people and the alternates and the judge that you've actually committed the crime. So I think that it's difficult to kind of maintain someone's constitutional rights and then also be super transparent with the public in the role that I'm in as for a district attorney's office, right? Like we can't put stuff out like how say maybe a local police officer, they make a really cool arrest and they post the pictures of the car and the dog and the this and the that. We wouldn't be able to share that because it could potentially tamper with the jury or it could potentially infringe on that defendant's rights. And so it's a different type of transparency, with the people in our community. And it's just kind of working between our local law enforcement agencies and fostering that open relationship with them.
And what you're seeing that also change for law enforcement agencies, where
Yeah.
they're not putting
Yeah.
out mugshots for certain things, and they're not publicizing certain aspects of cases now because of the image that creates. Even missing persons has been different because you leave that the agency leaves it up on social media forever, and no, they don't really go back and remove it, and that person's image is out there as a missing person, and we could be causing damage later on to that person's
Yeah.
reputation.
Yeah, we say here that it's not a court of public opinion, because unfortunately, when stuff goes on social media, that's where people, judge, juror, executioner kind of thing. Court of public opinion. People make their minds up based on a caption, not based on the facts and the totality of the circumstances. And actually, you're talking about the booking photos and the mugshots, and that's one of the things. Criminal justice reform here in California. The governor signed AB 1475, which banned law enforcement agencies, including ourselves at the district attorney's office, from using booking photos until after conviction. Because to your point, who has the time? I mean, I don't have the time to go back 2 years ago and take somebody's photo down, or whatever it may be. It's a good use of practice moving forward for PIOs and for law enforcement agencies, because of the continued impact that posting on something could have.
Correct. And as a matter of fact, we might arrest somebody as an officer, we might arrest somebody and call it one crime. And then by the time it goes to court and trial, it could be a completely different.
Yeah. Or added a myriad of them. We've seen that too. Right. You get arrested for this, and then all of a sudden the investigation comes, and now we have 27 new counts to something, and we're like, whoo, okay, well, but we also want to be very careful, we don't want to censor ourselves, but at the same time, we have to protect everyone who comes through our doors. And I'm sure, law enforcement feels the same way.
So a question about that law change that the governor signed.
Yeah.
So in an example of like a sexual predator, a child predator, where it's something that happened at a gym or something like that, girls were sexually assaulted, and then the government, the agency's looking for more victims, hoping to bring more victims forward. Mm-hmm. How do they handle that?
That's an exigent circumstance. So violent criminals, people who are their law enforcement agencies are searching for ASAP, like this example, or maybe there's somebody who's fled, who's considered armed and dangerous. Those are not part of the law. We're talking about the drug arrest, the homeless person who maybe have trespassed and now their photos up, those kinds of like low level non-violent crimes that unfortunately are, again, court of public opinion, and now potentially, endangering the investigation and prosecution of the case.
Exactly. So for you guys, I'm going to add one question here before I go to the next one. How are you handling the issues that COVID has created?
We have to be more specific here.
Okay. So obviously there are still criminal cases going on. You have trials, and you have defendants and witnesses coming into the court system. How are you messaging that information out to the community and the public?
Well, first thing, I'm really proud to say that our office and the Superior Court of San Joaquin County never shut down a single day. We went remote. We did virtual, testimony. We allowed virtual witnesses to come in and do those kinds of things. But as for the impact of COVID, I know that everyone's backed up. Everyone's felt the impact of the pandemic. We've seen trends, unfortunately, nationwide with violent crime go up. I mean, this is something that's not happening here locally. It's happening across the nation. And it's the impact of this pandemic is going to be felt for years. And unfortunately, this is not going to be an easy fix for our nation.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you.
Yeah.
All right. So how are you guys at you specifically handling that crunch of information, the desire for the public to need to know? And do you have any programs or outreach that have been implemented to try and feed the public?
Well, I think that we've talked about this, but unfortunately with the nature of our cases, some of this stuff is not as time crunch as people are wanting with our cases, because investigations take time. I don't think people realize how long some investigations take. Trials take time. A murder trial can take, up to a year, 2 years, depending on the motions that are enacted, evidence, discovery, whatnot. So I think that the best way that we try to do with the public is engaging them with all the different facets of our office. I didn't even know how extensive our office was until I became an employee here. The different departments, the outreach programs that happen, are under the leadership of our district attorney, Tori River Salazar. She's quadrupled our victim witness unit. So our advocates who can provide assistance to victims in our community. We have a family justice center, we have a therapy dog. So we're trying really hard to get those positive stories out. And increasing those social media presence, so we're hitting people all the time with the positives. And I think that that's really important for all law enforcement. first and foremost, because nobody really calls the police for something good. No one comes to our office, goes through the criminal justice system because something good has happened to them. Typically, it's tied to a crime, a trauma, a victimization. And that, if we focus on, can be very heavy and very negative, and it will steer the conversation. And in a world post-pandemic, we all need a little positivity. As for programs, you mentioned, we actually have our own podcast. Our district attorney has her own podcast. It's called
Nice.
Table. Yeah, not where we've done 12 episodes. We're editing our 12th episode. She invites different people from areas of our inside of our department and in the community to come to the table to discuss criminal justice reform, how a case goes through the criminal justice system. PNCC, our diversion program that we have in house. It's a really lovely tool to hear topics from the community and address them in this platform.
Outstanding. The podcasts are great for that reason. And one of the things that I've seen agencies that are doing a lot more, especially law enforcement agencies, are using it for long, detailed series on cold cases.
Yep.
Not Ashley McDonald. God, I can't think of her name now, from Boynton Beach. They do a podcast, and they have one of their interns that's doing a podcast on cold cases. So they're pulling up old homicides, and they're going through detailed with the detectives and the officers that were involved in it, and they're literally building the case as they go to try and get the public to provide more information to maybe potentially close a case that's been sitting dormant for years.
Right? And those people still deserve justice and to know and their families, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So, how are you handling the transparency issue as a public entity?
Transparency, well, first and foremost, right, we talked about this, we are beholden to our community. We want to be sure that if they have a question about something, we can provide an answer. This last year, our office released our first ever public data report to show how many cases were referred, what types of cases our office handles, everything from how much in victim restitution goes out of our office to the victims of our community. It is a very in-depth report, and it's going to be an annual thing from here on out, so people can see what our office takes on and handles. And then the other part of being transparent is not just sitting on social media and whatnot, but actually engaging in our community. So we do our best, pandemic willing, to be accessible to those people, whether it's at events like Coffee with a Cop. We just joined one of our local law enforcement partners down there in Manteca yesterday, or at different events in the community where they can come up and ask us questions. Maybe they have a question about how a criminal case goes through the trial, or, hey, my so-and-so family member is a victim of domestic violence. How can I get them help? And we have resources available to them right then and there.
Right. That's excellent. And I'll tell you, it's the annual report. I think a lot of agencies, they've gotten into the habit of putting out an annual report because it's important to get that whole body of work out there. But maybe sometimes they forget to break down sections of it and push those sections out, whether social or even in short video snippets, to let the public know about specific areas of their whatever information that they put into their annual report. I mean, most departments, it's calls for service, types of calls, types of crimes, how many arrests you've had, all that. It just depends on the type of agency. But I think those are important for, as a PIO, to remember that not just putting out a document on a PDF format and letting the public see it, but promoting it and getting it out there visually so that they can actually look at it. Because the public loves transparency, but they don't want to have to go look for it deeply.
And if you hand them a 35-page document with graphs and charts, they're like,
right.
And
right. They're so used to the general public is so used to the news, the way it's set up in 2-minute formats, that they really want just the basics and the graphics, and they want to be spoon-fed, and that's fine. And but we have to remember that as PIOs that helps more to drive people to maybe want to seek out the detailed annual report as opposed to never looking for it.
I tell my elected official, my DA Verber Salazar, that we need to meet people where they're at. So if we have people that are commenting on things that are saying like they're not understanding something we've put out, then maybe we need to readdress how that's targeted or the topic or the verbiage so that it's more understandable. So sometimes we'll have put out a press release about a case that's happened, and people will have questions about, well, why are the charges this way? So maybe the next time we do a press release, we include a reasoning why we went for those charges. So it's not left to the public to fill in their own blanks. And that's typically when you start seeing some of the misinformation and disinformation populate, when people are having to fill in their own stories.
Excellent. That is a great, that's active listening. That's taking that active listening and then turning it into something positive for the future, because and that unfortunately is another area that PIOs sometimes forget because we are so busy. We are doing so much. Mm-hmm. And it's hard sometimes to grab that and say, okay, I have to address this in the future. How do I do it? All right. So how are you handling the changes now, because we've gone through the George Floyd's scenario and all the other ones that have happened in the last 3 to 5 years, right? The social and criminal justice reforms that have hit, as a prosecutor's office, how are you putting the messaging out for you guys in California?
Well, I think for us in California, I think that we have across the nation, we're hearing calls for reform, but I think California has enacted some of these calls for change in criminal justice pretty quickly. And our office, and along with our local law enforcement partners, have already made some sort of changes. We have, reentry programs. We've decriminalized a lot of drug-related offenses to misdemeanors and whatnot. Hearing from the voters what is working for them and what's not working. For criminal justice reform and what it means for our office, the last 20 years, we've partnered with the San Joaquin County Superior Courts, behavioral health, probation, behavioral health probation, the public defender's office, and we've done what's called collaborative courts. So if someone, I'm sure, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but like DUI courts, drug court, homeless court, veterans court. So if you are a first-time offender or a low offender on the totem pole, and it's not violent in nature, and your path is not written for you, because that's what one of the criticisms that I hear of criminal justice reform is that people just think that we're light on crime, right? That we're not arresting people, we're not putting them in jail. Like, no, there are some of those people, their help is not, like, resources and services and programs they're not going to fix. Those aren't the people we're talking about. We're talking about the people that we can get into a program for 12 to 18 months. They work with counselors, anger management, rehabilitation services for substance abuse and alcohol abuse. And then at the end of it, they come back before the judge. And if they've graduated and met all of the requirements, then maybe we take that felony and make it a misdemeanor. Or maybe we take that misdemeanor and say, hey, you know what? We're dismissing the case. You've done everything we've asked of you and more. People don't understand that there are so many consequences to a felony on a record. But the three majors are education, employment, housing. And when you take somebody's ability away, even after they've served their time, done their rehabilitation, done their time in jail, maybe they've been on parole, for however many years, and you take those three things away from them, like the only option really is to reoffend, right?
Right.
And that's why we see the frequent faces through our office. And I'm sure you, as a law enforcement official, you've seen them, that you know them, their families, because it's just a cycle that's repeated. And so if it's not working, why do we keep doing it? Like, why? That's my question.
I agree. And that's something that I'm happy that the social justice reforms, some of them have really worked to divert people away from going to that path that ultimately will just make them reoffenders and getting them the services that they truly need. Mm-hmm. So in messaging that, how do you guys go ahead and message that out as the agency from the PIO standpoint?
We did a whole podcast episode on our Project Navigate Constructive Change. It's our PNCC program that targets youthful first-time offenders. So we're not having 18-year-olds with felonies that are going to be in the jail the rest of their lives. We've done outreach with at the collaborative courts graduation. We have the professional photographer. You have, your press release, the pictures of the district attorney, and you put out the positive stories of where this has worked, so people maybe change their perception of this again, right? And make it more relatable. Because I think that's where the disconnect is with some of the general public. They just assume, again, we're funneling everybody into these kinds of programs. And when you hear of somebody who's gone through a drug court, who's done 18 months and graduated, with 3 years ago was homeless, and then now has a full ride scholarship to a university because he did the work, did the program, had his charges reduced,
Right.
and now he is going to be a contributing member to society. And somebody might go, oh, I have a cousin who suffered from, drug abuse or whatnot. Maybe that could be the path that they're on. And as soon as you
Right.
start making those stories more relatable and accessible to people, that's when they start buying into what change is coming.
I think that's very important for us to remember to do things like that, because frequently that the public's perception is everybody's getting off on crimes. I mean, you think of, and in Illinois here, it's pretty bad with felony crimes. We have a district attorney's office or state's attorney's office that is almost ineffective right now. And it is, we've had, I think yesterday I saw the number, I think it was 36 males that were involved in felony murder cases that had reoffended while they were out on bond.
No.
Yeah, they should have been locked up, but they're not.
No.
I mean, it's unbelievable. Excellent stuff you guys are doing there. Keep that up. I love the podcast idea because it gives you a great way to promote your organization individually, and when you you find out something that you need to talk about, you can pivot and talk about it in the future.
You have a platform. You have a platform, and you have somewhere. And again, to your point, if there's information that people can discern there and they want to find the information, you've made it very abundantly easy for them to find it. You have a social media post, you have a podcast episode, you have a link on your website.
Right. Excellent. All right, so let's change this up. We're going to go to some rapid fire questions. Okay.
I'm ready.
So your favorite go-to drink?
Iced coffee.
Oh.
I have it in my hand all times of the year. All times.
Name one person, living or dead, whom you'd like to meet and why.
I had like 3 running in my head, but the one that I want to scream out, John Wayne.
Oh.
Why?
The Duke. Oh, yeah.
The Duke. My parents were both working, and my grandmother basically picked up my sister and I from school, my Mima, every day. And when we get home, she would have a movie from John Wayne on, or so I was raised on John Wayne. One of my favorite movies is McClintock, so I would love to meet him.
That would be awesome. That's awesome. I love. There's not one movie I've ever seen of his that I have not loved.
When I'm not feeling well, just give me like Rio Bravo, El Dorado, north to Alaska, and just leave me alone. Great.
Okay. What is a must-read book in your mind?
So I have 2. The first being, it's a classic, Pride and Prejudice, because I think everyone can learn a little bit from that book. And then the second is a more recent book, Where the Crawdads Sing. It's now being turned into a movie, but I cried at that book. It was beautifully written.
And what is it about?
Where the Crawdads Sing?
Yeah.
It is about this young girl who's raised amidst of the depression in the middle of like the swamp, and everyone of her family kind of leaves, and so she kind of becomes like the swamp girl and raises herself, and loss and love in that kind of time period of her life. And then something, I don't want to give away the ending, the spoiler alert, but basically something happens to her and she's put on trial. Oh. And then it's the rest of the book is spent going back and forth between what's happening to her in the trial and if they can prove that this person did the thing anyway. And it's powerful. It's powerful. Talk about criminal justice reform.
Excellent. Well, that's okay. That's good. All right. Favorite food?
Anything Italian, the carbs, the pastas, the pizzas. I love them.
Excellent. Yes. Well, being an Italian girl, you better.
Yeah. It's in my blood. I can't help it.
What is one thing you would change in the world if you could?
Really hard question there, Robert.
Yep.
First and foremost, I think I would first change people's perception that happiness is tied to things. I think that would fix a lot of issues that this society has. Albert Einstein said that if you want to live a happy life, tie your life to goals and not to people or things, and it speaks volumes. And I try to live my life that way.
You know what? That is an excellent perspective. I like that. Anything you would like to add in these final thoughts?
Just that I'm really excited to be here. I think this PIO podcast is a wonderful tool for us PIOs to know that, because sometimes it is very isolating. Like you said, we're very busy people. And I mean, my work phone is on me at all times, even on vacations, because you never know when something's going to go off or hit the fan. So to have a community such as this in such a platform is really special. So thank you for that.
No, anytime. It's been a definite passion of mine to do the podcast. It really has.
I love it.
Okay, so how can people best reach out to you if they'd like to get a hold of you or learn more about what you do?
Yeah, so LinkedIn would be the best. This is kind of taboo, but as a PIO, I do not have a personal Twitter. That's one platform I do not have a personal account on.
What?
I know, taboo. I think I just handed you my PIO card. The other way would be sjgov.org/DA. That is our website. The data report is there. Our Come to the Table podcast links are there. And then my contact information is on that page. And I'm happy to have any questions or be accessible to anybody who needs help.
And I will put all that in the show notes.
Thank you very much.
Elisa, thank you very much for coming on the show. I really appreciate you coming on. When we talked initially, you were like, I don't know what I'm going to have to offer. And you had a lot to offer. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I just was hearing every one of those episodes, and I mean, you had people from the Army, the FBI, and I was just like, oh my goodness, this is such a wealth of knowledge. And from again, like you said, from private to public, so I'm standing really alone on that, right? People are going typically the opposite way. So I'm happy to offer my experience.
Excellent. Nope. And we're going to have some more great PIOs on and people from all walks of life coming out in the next few months. I'm lining them up as we go.
I can't wait. Well, anything I can do to help, Robert, please. I'm so excited to be a part of this. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. You have a great day. Thank you for being on the show. Take care.
Thank you so much.
And that was episode 36 with Elisa Bubak from the San Joaquin District Attorney's Office. Thanks for coming on the show. Until next week, everybody, be safe.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you would like to contact the show, please email us at thepiopodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast to get notified of the latest episode. If you are listening on a platform that allows reviews, please give us a review. We appreciate any review, good or bad. It helps us improve on each episode. Until next time, be safe.